Hey guys, this is Dagon123, and welcome to
Tenchicast.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the next exciting episode of Tenchicast, presented by Tenchiforum.com. It has been an eventful fall season for the members of Tenchiforum, and even more eventful for Tenchi Muyo itself. Plot has happened, characters have happened, and a lot of hype is building up towards the end of the show. And to help us be plants in the crowd of hype, Crazed,
It's good to be back.
Pie,
Live from the Science Academy, WashU! We'll present everything.
Nil,
Oh, Diane, I almost forgot. Got to find out what kind of trees these are. They're really something.
and Who.
Do not adjust your internet. Tenchicast is back. How's it going, everybody?
And to start off this week, we are actually going to start off with the Tenchi Talkback segment and get to hear from you, the Tenchi fans, some of the things that you have been saying. Nil.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Tenchi Talkback portion of the cast. We're going to start with this time because there's been a few weeks of silence on our part, and you have continued to wanted to be included in the discussion, so we're going to just jump right into it. For the uninitiated, Tenchi Talkback is our way to have you, the audience, get on the podcast even when you can't be in the podcast itself. You leave a comment with the hashtag Tenchi Talkback, which will be included in the video description below, so that you can essentially just tell us what you think about each episode as it comes, or the week as a whole, your thoughts on the series building up to that point in time. And then we discuss it here. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's not waste too much more time. Our first one comes from Facebook, from James Wilkie. Apologize if I pronounced that wrong. Who says, "That was an odd week, but funny to see how mad the show can get at times." And of course, by mad, he's referring to the kind of comical pacing and the sense of humor that, Tenchi actually has. And I definitely think that's something worth pointing out, because the show is very heavily humor related. In fact, it's kind of something that Tenchi is known for. It's always been kind of a humorous show. It has the potential to be very dramatic, but it also has the ability to be very comedically inclined. And as we've seen from a lot of the sequences, including just Yuki and Rui's whole relationship is the straight man and then the whacked out comedy duo. Hachiko's burst into tears every time she loses her Boken segments, stuff like that. Even little bits of dialogue here and there, just little witty jabs at one another. Absolutely hilarious. So, I want to talk about some of the humor, some of the things that we found funny this week, last week, the week before that. I lost count now. Anyways, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the humor by Mr. James Wilkie.
Well, one thing I'd like to go ahead and point out about the humor of the show is even the voice actors realize that this particular show happens to be oriented towards comedy as well as science fiction and fantasy. When we were talking to Matt, this is going to tie into the Chibi podcast, no doubt. When we were talking to Matt Miller, he actually was referencing how much comedy there was, and mentioned that the show at certain points was taking itself, air quotes, too seriously. And he enjoyed the jokes, and I believe Petrea Burchard actually referenced the fact that the jokes were something that she enjoyed as well.
I'm really impressed with not only it's a whole nother ball of wax we could go into with the format, as we've touched on. The 4 minutes. It's amazing what they can do with 4 minutes. What Negishi can do with that. But what I've loved about the humor particularly is yes, there's some ecchi stuff, there's some slapstick stuff, like you'd see in a lot of other shows. But the amazing thing about Tenchi Muyo is when they call this a celebration of the franchise, they weren't just blowing smoke. They were. It wasn't just because, oh yeah, it's around, anniversary of it. So many years have gone by, and we'll just happen to have a premiere. No. Like, you can watch it. You can breeze right through it and not pay much attention. 4 minutes, yeah, whatever. Have a few laughs, absolutely. But if you really pay attention, there's so many, as we've gone over many on the cast to date here, and there's there's no way we could touch them all, even if we weren't playing catch up at this point. Just how many in jokes. I mean, it is esoteric to an nth degree. On if you're a hardcore Tenchi fan watching this, it doesn't matter what your favorite series is. It doesn't matter who your favorite characters. They've got a joke or a lampoon for you or something in there that's going to tickle your ribs if you're just paying attention. So it's fun for people who might be new to Tenchi as well, but the real treat is for those of us who are fans coming in to watch it. Hana being God, it's like Ayaka's going into a almost like dominatrix punishing her, and she's going, "Oh, please forgive me, One-san," and I'm like, "Oh my God, they're doing." Oh my! It's Ayaka's "Call Me Princess." I swear. Oh my God! And so I'm impressed. I've never seen a franchise be able to pick up that much later and have, as some others might be able to mention here, not just references like that. I mean, that was a sound file. That wasn't even in an actual Tenchi series. That was a sound file. But all the references they make also to the fandom in general. They're up on everything. Nagishi's a fan too, so it's all good.
I think one of the things that we had had gotten on the topic of before was what made Tenchi's comedy different, what made it unique. It's very smart, and I think that comes through much like Who said very well in Tenchi Muyo. Tenchi Muyo's comedy, the way it plays up its jokes and its laughs, they're very smart. They're very aware. It's very, I don't say meta because I don't think it's although there are a few instances you could make an argument for that, but it's very smart. It's not just, I mean, there is slapstick. There is very I don't say superficial. It's very on the it's very much a front, like a mask, but the majority of it, you really have to sit down and catch. Like with Ayaka, the first thing I thought of was, oh my God, they're referencing Call Me Princess. Something like that is very rare. It was on the sound file. It was something that was only released in Japan. They referenced it, and they made it a joke. And so a lot of people might look at that and think, oh, well, that's just Hana, because Hana kind of had, Hana had a doujin called Tenchi in Chains. Cue Alice in Chains music. But it's actually referencing, or supposed to reference, this thing that Ayaka did before, 20 years ago. So, I mean, that's the one thing that I've liked about Tenchi's comedy and its laughs and how it's done things. It's very smart. It understands who's watching it and plays it up perfectly.
It's like Who said, the people behind this series, Nagishi and everybody else included, they're fans of the series. They've kept their finger on the pulse of this fandom for all these years, despite the fact that Nagishi hasn't done anything with this franchise in close to over a decade. I think that's been my favorite thing about the humor of this show is just all the in jokes they have, like the one with "Call Me Princess." If you had never seen that sound file or heard it, you would have never caught the reference. I think my favorite one so far has been when Tenchi and the old girls defect to the science club for a little while, and they pull up a picture on that phone, and it's just Tenchi and Sasami standing side by side there at the beach. And immediately, what do they all do? Oh, Tenchi, you pervert. They're pulling an in-joke to all the people who would ship Tenchi and Sasami together.
Well, in the same vein, Tori seems to have a very unhealthy obsession with Sasami as well, and I don't think that's coincidence either.
Yeah, I've always kind of seen Tori's obsession over Sasami as being kind of like a prod at the people who obsess over idol characters like Hatsune Miku, and of course that joke was made, so that's why I kind of figure that that's what they're kind of going along with. They made kind of the reference like, oh, is she an idol, do you think? Like, well, the obvious joke that Hatsune Miku has some similarities to Sasami's character design. I think they're definitely playing her up as a joke to the people outside looking in at the fandoms and seeing all these people get really crazy about these lolly characters, and they're just like, man, have you looked at yourself in the mirror? Well, here's Tori with one for you. But it's obviously in kind of a tongue-in-cheek manner because people don't seriously drown themselves in bathwater where a fictional character previously bathed. It's that's the joke of it. There's a lot of jokes that are just very well done like that are kind of wink wink nudge nudge to the fans. We already talked about Call Me Princess, all that other fun stuff like that. I had one in my head and it just kind of vanished. Give me a second here.
Well, what was it? One of the background characters from the school asked if Sasami was an idol, playing up to a Hatsune Miku reference with her.
But yeah, that's what I was saying. Like they already made the joke with it, so Tori's continuously obsessive behavior, like taking nonstop pictures of her, writing about her, saying she wants to eat Sasami-chan instead of just eat her cooking. She wants to eat Sasami. Like these little things like that are just like completely outrageous. But that's the joke, is that she's just become completely obsessive, and that's where the humor therein lies. There's also the old girls and their humor. They basically haven't skipped a beat in the past decade or two. They still act exactly the same as they have. They're a little more mature, but you have things like when Hana called Ayaka grandma, and it just set Ayaka off. Like the nuclear weapon went off in the back of her head, and she was like, "Well, what?" And next thing you know, all of Ayaka's weapons are appearing out of thin air, and the next time we see either of them, Hana's on the floor, and Ayaka's just got her, her foot on her head, like, "All right, bitch, what'd you say about me again?" They haven't skipped a beat. The arguments between Ryoko and Ayaka, even when they're just having a simple conversation in the bathhouse, they're fighting over, the bathing instrument, and they end up breaking it. It's the little things like that make you realize that even though there's an obvious focus on kind of the new girls, as it were, from time to time, the old girls haven't changed a bit, and the writers know exactly how to play them. Another example being in the most recent episodes, this very serious, solemn discussion between the Science Academy, who we haven't actually heard from in a while in the series proper. I don't think they came into question at the very end of Universe, I guess, but not very often frequently mentioned. And then, of course, the Galaxy Police, who they are who they are, getting a real serious discussion about, okay, well, we think we know who's behind all this madness, and there's this dramatic, tense build up with this very gravelly voiced head of the Galaxy Police unit in charge of this investigation. It's like, all right, so who is it? Well, it's Washu. And then she just pops up on screen and she's got this rock star face. She's just giving him a wink and a tongue out like, yep, it's me. Fucking hasn't skipped a beat since 2003. And I think that the creators just have gotten the physical slapstick element down pat. They've got the comedic timings with discussions down pat. They've got the perfect amount of fan service in regards to giving the old fans the perfect amount and the realization that, hey, the old girls haven't really changed. They're still here. They're still the same people. While setting up plenty of enjoyable things for the new girls as well. And I think that they've done pretty well with that so far. Pretty decent.
I've actually really loved the mirror effect that they've got with Ryoko and Benny, because every time Ryoko and Benny are in the same room together, sparks start flying because, to be honest, they are too fucking similar. I was rewatching episodes 26 to 25 today in preparation for the podcast, and looking at some of the things they have Benny do, like she has her sitting on top of the roof just like Ryoko does, staring at the stars. You have Ryoko and Benny's competition all through the series. There's some obvious parallels going on there, and the fact that they just butt heads every time is hilarious. Even though in many ways they're so similar, it hurts. But one thing I'm going to drag Who up here for is Kumo-kun, Rui and the Spider. That has to be the one thing that I have really enjoyed the most in this show is Rui's ridiculous fear of spiders and everything, all the hilarity that ensues because of that. Who, I turn it to you.
God, man, that's a whole nother thing. Not just what the creators behind it are putting in there between the lines, or straight in your face, subtle as a train wreck, but already this series is it's still hot out of the oven. It's still brand new, and you're seeing a lot from from all over. The fandom, everybody was a little apprehensive at first, but once things started moving, the fandom just lit up, and we've already seen fantastic fan art featuring the new styles, the new clothing. We're seeing cosplay stuff come out, so a little more on the business end, and then of course it's the internet, and memes and stuff pop up, and so one that we have kind of, as far as I know, unique to our own sphere of the fandom right now is we noticed a recurring theme with poor Rui-chan and this spider, or spiders. So then we thought it'd be fun. Of course, this is all just fan stuff. It's just all just for fun, not implying here, oh, they meant to. But so we started just saying, oh, maybe it's that same spider keeps messing with her. Well, maybe he's not messing with her. Maybe he's trying to get her attention. And so then Pi, I think, came up. He's got to have a name. And what's Japanese for spider? Kumo. So it's Kumo-kun. And so now we have forum shipping of Ryu-chan and a spider. And of course, that's all just as much of the series itself is. It's all in tongue-in-cheek, and it's all in fun. It's not like, well, I don't think Rui-chan and Kumo-kun is canon. Well, no duh. But we're having fun with it. And so even though we're trying to play catch up here, and there's a lot, which I think we'll probably jump into here, is not just the fun stuff, the lighthearted stuff, but we also get the ball rolling on plot, big time here, overarching plot. But along the way, this series is about having fun, and all the weeks that we've. Well, again, we're sorry. We were at Chibi Pa convention planning. Had a panel there, and obviously you're seeing some of the uploads from that, and we'll give some shout outs that some fine people, fellow fans there, had a great time. But we've been keeping up with watching the series and stuff, and so much has happened, and so, some feelsy moments, like Pi said, with Benny on the roof, very much Manatsu no Eve, Daughter of Darkness feel there. I get that was no accident. So I know this is a lot to jump off of from Kumo-kun, humble little Kumo-kun, but again, we made up that name, people, so don't anyway, let people take that how they will. But again, the series is about having fun. It's about reveling in the fandom, all of us, because here we have Negishi, even though his personal contribution in the past was Universe, and now he gets to say he was behind I. But even though his was Universe, he's drawing from everywhere, from everybody who's had their turn with this wonderful thing we all know and love, is Tenchi, Hasagawa, and Kashima, even Hayashi, and his own work as well. So it's about having fun. It's not complicated.
But who? You're telling me there's not gonna be a doujin where Rui gets with the spider?
Tell you what, if Hana hears this cast, then you better believe within like that same day she's gonna have the first 5 volumes for you, and she's gonna tell you, I've got more on the way, and you'll go, oh Lord.
But who would we have to worry about more, Hana or Kajishima? I mean, I'm sorry, not really.
I'll take 20 Pa's Zoidberg in becoming such a crafty consumer.
He'd be terrible at picking up doujins, by the way, with those claws.
Bah.
Why do I cut everything that I touch? Bah!
Alright, steer the ship back on to the rails here real quick. Alright, so next up we have Carlos Sanchez and Max Ruiz. Actually, I'm going to switch that around. Max first. He says on Facebook, I'm still hyped for what's building up, and this leads into Carlos Sanchez's question here, or statement anyways. I just realized we're like 5 episodes away from the end, and it feels like they've just gotten to the main plot. So I wanted to combine these two together because we will be actually launching off into the regular podcast portion from this question, or from these Tenchi talkbacks. But I did want to address first Carlos's concern about the number of episodes. This show was announced for 50 episodes way back in, what was it, May, when it was first announced?
Yes.
And we've just assumed that there would be 50 episodes, like normal. When we began subtitling, a lot of places had things listed as having the recap episodes be a numbered episode. As it so turns out, and something that we found out about 2 weeks in, the recap episodes are not actually considered episodes by episode structures. They don't have numbers, they're simply there. So right now, we're looking at episode 45. So one would think that next week would be it. And initially, we had projected that December 12th would be the final episode of iTenchi. Thankfully, because we're loving this all so much, that's not the case. The iTenchi calendar on the official website was updated like at the very crack-ass start of December, and on it, there was new episodes listed, 2 whole weeks of it, and there are no recap episodes for the final 2 weeks of the show. This goes all the way through until the day after Christmas now. So we don't have to worry so much about, well, are they going to hurry up with the plot or not? Because 1, there's plenty of plot, but 2, we have 3 weeks instead of just 1 now. And seeing how so much can happen in a single week's worth of episodes, there's a lot that's going to be happening in these next couple of weeks, these next 3 weeks. And, we just want to let everybody know that there will be a slight difference in the number of episodes compared to what was originally said. It will not be ending at 50 for our personal count, but it is technically still 50 episodes. The way it works is that every school day that Tenchi has, including the feudal era flashback type sequence, has 5 episodes each. The recap episodes, of which there are 10 of, do not count towards the episode count at all by official means. In fact, I believe Negishi had mentioned that they wouldn't even be on the DVD and Blu-ray releases. So you cut out those 10, and what does it give us? It gives us 10 whole episodes to work with. That's 2 weeks, because there's 5 episodes a week. And what wouldn't you know it, the last 2 weeks of the show, here they are. There they are. So the show will be running not until December 12th, but through the 12th all the way to the 26th, which is, that's fantastic news. So just want to let everybody know that slight miscount, but don't worry, there's plenty of iTenchi where it came from. Now, to get on to the other portion of this, talk about the main plot. There's a lot of buildup that's going on right now, especially with the most recent episode the most recent few episodes where we finally start to see the galaxy get involved here. The universe is getting dragged into things. The galaxy police are now like armed and ready. We found out that Ukon is actually a member of the galaxy police, and that Mahoshi has been undercover the entire time working as a galaxy police officer, because lest we forget, that's what she actually does for her day job, not digging holes. She tricked everybody. She even kind of lied to the family's face a bit. Was just like, oh yeah, I'm just here, just doing this thing. Don't tell anybody. She's undercover, and she don't want anybody else to know that she's there for business reasons. Ukon pulling the strings. That was a mind blow right there. Like, holy shit. All this time, everybody thought Ukon's going to be a demon, or she's going to be like a Kagato type villain. It could be Kagato in disguise. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. It turns out, no. She's just a member of the Galaxy Police, and she's in. They're undercover. She's keeping an eye on Tenchi. She's trying to get to the bottom of all this mess that Washu's been starting. And that was a great twist. And because of Washu's interference and the style of her interference with science and whatnot, the Academy has taken a notice. And now they want to know what the fuck is going on. So now they're asking the GP, dudes, what's the deal here? And the GP are like, well, it's Washu. Big surprise. the big players are here. We have the Academy. We have the Galaxy Police. I'm sure Jirai wants to know what the fuck's going on here at some point eventually, especially with Ayeka and Sasami finally knowing what the whole plan was here. Oh, there's a Jiraiyan ship under the school, and what we're looking for is a key that activates when Momo and Benny touches it, and what the fuck. Jirai most assuredly has some chess pieces still in this battle that are ready to move. Like boom, right there goes the dynamite. The next 3 weeks are going to be incredibly packed. There's going to be, of course, the school stuff, because that's the basis for it all, but it's not really about what happens at the school so much as it is that things have been and always have been much larger than they've seemed. And then Negishi did something similar in Universe, where he spent a very long amount of time building up the characters, and then after Time and Space Adventures, it was just a straight shoot of plot. And all of a sudden, all this stuff is happening, and then, Bastard killing Ryoko and whatnot, and you're pulling the heartstrings. There's plenty of time for him to fuck with us and do what he did back in Universe. He knows what he's doing. We just had to give him a little bit of time to get introductions out of the way. So I've been blabbing on about plot a little bit too much. Let's pass the mic here. Somebody else. Let's talk plot, because there is a lot of it that's happened in the past 3 weeks.
Oh, I can talk plot. Me and Who were talking plot a lot when we were in the airport, and we we were cooking up some badass theories. Thankfully, in many ways, some of them have been shot down. I had a theory going along for a while that this entire school universe was actually a shell, that it was essentially an illusion, much like Tenchi Muyo in Love 2. And I was theorizing that Ukon might have been behind it. And I theorized that it might have been Momo who was keeping this thing alive, much like Haruna did. Thankfully, that actually has been shot down now. I was thinking that possibly the Ayeka, Ryoko, and Mahoshi and Sasami that we were seeing were not actually them. That Tenchi was living in this fantasy world that was made up to look like his real world, and other wacky things. Thankfully, those have all been horribly shot down, and now we're getting into the good shit of seeing what the Galaxy Police and Science Academy are up to. Turns out, of course, Ayeka, Ryoko, Washu, and Sasami were all involved in this all along. That was revealed in one of the more recent episodes, I think in the 40s somewhere, and I swear, we're getting into the good stuff now.
I think, can we just lay this, there's maybe several things, but just to make sure that, so everybody's on the same page here with regards to, it was revealed that, via flashback and or flash forward rather, whatever, that, so when Tenchi was sent by Washu, he was actually, initially, before he was sent to Janai, he was sent back in time, as it were. I forget the episode title, but we see, obviously, then they dig up his smartphone or whatever, and so there's connection there. So, and then of course this ties into when he goes back in time. So kind of shooting down that this would be a I guess what I'm getting at is can we so everybody's sure now, can we reasonably presume that I is truly it's its own beast. It's another series, and it doesn't really seem to tie it into any one of the pre-existing continuities seems like it would be limiting of it, or it'd be quite a stretch to shoehorn it in somewhere, because otherwise you'd be dealing with not only differences in time but also differences in dimensions, which is kind of what we were. Again, there's precedence for that. When we were coming in, we certainly didn't necessarily doubt it. But would anyone say, has that been debunked as well? So when Tenchi went back and there was Hachiko and Tori and Hana, and they're in feudal times, and he meets up with Ryoko, who didn't recognize him, which is kind of drawing more from OVA Ryoko. Are we still dealing with different dimensions, do you think, or is it just that was him going back in time, as it were?
I think that was back in time.
I think it's probably safe to say back in time.
That seems what I was drawing as well. So that way, again, people You know, we'll say you'll have the gospel word after it's all said and done. When sadly, I concludes, and we'll be able to say yes, it's its own universe, its own series. But I would say that even right now, to help people with their enjoyment, because I think that's probably we're kind of, a lot of us are used to that, because that's what comes with the territory of being a Tenchi fan, is just like, oh, there's one called Tenchi in Tokyo. Oh, there's Universe. Oh, there's Pretty Sammy. And just kind of throwing off the shackles of whatever previous series you were watching and taking it all new again. And so I think a lot of people, what might have been hampering the enjoyment of it is like, well, is it OVA? Is it Universe? Well, it's Negishi directing it. But don't worry about it, basically, is what I would say. It's drawing from, 20 some years of accumulated the franchise and the fandom as a whole. So Ryoko having her backstory of, she was apparently, if it's just the singular timeline, linear timeline we're dealing with, and Tenchi went back in time, and Ryoko was there in feudal times, that ties into her backstory as a character in OVA. But there's a lot of other stuff, like as we've seen with the GP and the Science Academy, and their personalities as well. There's a lot of stuff that Negishi's bringing in from who the characters were in Universe as well. Also, then there's something to note. Washu Hakubi, they explicitly said her last name, which we don't see as often as you might think in the various Tenchi series for a lot of the characters, actually. But anyway, I digress, and I just wanted to get that out there so people kind of, if this late in the game, don't already know that or what have you, that's pretty much what we're looking at. And in that fun way, it's really fun, because we don't, it could go anywhere. We have no idea. We have no idea what Negishi's going to draw from, or if it's going to be completely new. We have no idea. And so that's I love that prospect of having that with the Tenchi series, and the first time in forever.
It's actually quite difficult to say for certain if it was simply going back in time or if it was an alternate universe, because if we remember, when the initial incident started happening, Washu had made the comment about how there was somebody who was in all of the different dimensions, who was in all of the various universes, as it were. And she specifically mentioned it was one person that I can remember, anyways, from way back. That was the very start of the series. And I'm pretty sure she also mentioned some sort of interdimensional scattering of Momo, and she just so happened to end up at a specific point. I am not 100% certain it was simply a time back, because at the same time, there's almost no... It just doesn't seem right in a way. I don't know. The phone is dated at 1,300 years underground. That makes like zero sense. Ryoko has the potential, I guess, from the past, but Mahoshi has never been given a lifespan of that long, as far as I know. So it would be some pretty interesting liberties with the characters to say that they all existed 1,300 years ago, exactly how they exist now. And just kind of hand wave that off. I think that there's some partial interdimensional transference going on here, and it wasn't strictly a time thing, because as we also remember, things were getting real fucked up. And if we assume, since the phone was what fell, that when the universe started going batshit, when the reset button didn't function, Earth wouldn't exist at that point. Like, it would have just been completely fucking destroyed. You have to have a lot of build up to get it back to the home that we know. So I'm pretty sure there was some alternate universe, multiple.
Oh, I'm fairly convinced that there's a lot of multiple universe stuff going on. The phone. My current theory for the explanation of the phone is that the place where Junai Academy exists on Earth is 1,300 years forward in this timeline from where the phone fell, and thus Momo's ship is obviously buried underneath it. So that timeline makes sense. The Ryoko and Mahoshi that you see, I'm still convinced that's the universe and incarnations of Ryoko and Mahoshi, from the way they're dressed and the way they act. again, this interdimensional rift, as Washu said, was bringing across multiple dimensions. It's possible that Momo and Benny aren't even from this incarnation's version of Jirai. Even they might have been pulled in from Universe or from Tokyo or God knows what, or some other parallel verse that we haven't even touched on before. So all this stuff gets hodgepodged into this feudal era thing. You have, of course, the girls from the feudal era there as well. Tenchi gets sucked up into this thing. Mahoshi gets sucked up in this thing. Ryoko gets sucked up in this thing. Momo gets sucked up into the thing. Tenchi gets pulled out because Washu's got essentially a chain on, think of it like a chain on him to pull his ass back and bring him back to the lab. That's where the other members of the household get involved to investigate Janai. But Washu said that the original girl was disseminated between the different universes. So it's possible that she might have been essentially scattered to the winds, and then a lot of her got glommed back together into the Momo that we're seeing. Something that I was talking to Dagon earlier about was, you notice how Momo's very naive. Actually, it's been said very often that Momo's as dumb as a brick. Well, part of that might be because the original Momo that she started as, the one that Tenchi met, that was pulled down to Earth, that Momo was a child. So when she got disseminated and reconstructed into the Momo that we see now, she still has the mentality of a child. So when all the other teenagers are talking to her about teenage things, boys, the growth of her breasts, all this nonsense, Momo's still completely naive about it because her mentality is not that of a teenager. She still has the mentality of a child.
I mean, I was pretty much going to say the same thing about the phone. He dropped the phone in the past, and so time happens, erosion, tectonic plates, blah, blah, blah. And so then you have the school pop up. Obviously, we still have to wonder what happened to Momo, because pretty much everything else could be attributed to just time displacement. Plus, we don't know what happened with the original quote-unquote feudal versions of Mihoshi and Ryoko. They got sucked into the void and could be scattered anywhere. But, one of the things that I really like about this show is that when things started to happen, nobody really had an idea. Like, when we saw that Benny and Momo were from Jirai, everybody kind of had an idea. Like, oh, well, they were on a ship together, and Benny refers to Momo as Momo-sama. So you kind of had an idea, like, well, maybe they're from Jirai. And then we find out they are. But the one that I loved, absolutely loved, and No brought this up, was nobody had any idea that Ukon was part of the Galaxy Police. Like, that was fantastic, because it was nice to not know and be surprised. It was a very nice turn. One of the things that I've also liked, and this is something that was brought up and is also part of the plot, is that Negishi is obviously a fan of anime. He's done anime, but he did anime before Tenchi Universe. He worked on Tekken Man Blade, so he's obviously a mech fan. Well, what's one of the things that we see Washu talk to the Science Club with? She's talking through a monolith. A monolith that has a red version of a crab logo on it. That's right from Ava. Like, that was so cool to see that he's very... There's nothing else that it could be. There's references to things outside of just anime that are happening in here. Or just this anime or Tenchi. But, having all of this plot happen, it's all being done very, very well, and we're timey-wimeying things around. What is Ukon's ultimate plan? Is she simply a partner with Mahoshi, working with the Galaxy Police? Are we going to finally find? What are we going to finally see when we find this Jirayan ship? Is the Science Academy the one that's talking with the GP? Are they going to get involved? Is the GP the big bad? Is Jirai going to get involved at all? It's very lots of stuff that's probably going to happen in the last 2 weeks that is going to be very interesting to see how it progresses. It's also kind of cool too, because we've been out a month because Chippy Paw, but we kind of thought, like, well, we saw Washu talking with the Science Club, or kind of like an entity or something. Like, they all seem to be in the same proximity, and then boom, they're she's talking directly with the Science Club. Why is she talking with the Science Club when she has Ryoko, Aika, Sasami, and Tenchi going back to fix this? Why does she need the science club? Why are they over here on the side? Lots of questions.
Actually, I'm very interested on what's on that ship because everyone's been referring to the treasure, and many times we've had theories about what the treasure was. We thought it was going to be Momo's sword key, which cropped up, which is different than Tenchikin. It has a pink hilt, and Tenchi, of course, always has his sword on him at all times. So we thought it was that. Then they dig up, and turns out Mahoshi had dug up the cell phone, and we hack into that, and we get to see that picture of Tenchi and Sasami at the beach. So we thought it was that. No, it's a tracker for something else, and turns out underneath the school, deep underground, is a Jurian spaceship. It's sitting down there too. But if you listen very closely to what the GP guys are talking about, one of the higher ups is saying that the great treasure is on that ship. So I'm curious as to what that ship's mission was. We see back in episode 33, I believe, is when we find out Momo and Benny are both from Jirai. I'm not even 100% convinced that Benny's from Jirai. Momo I can buy, but Benny I'm not 100% on. They were getting on their ship and taking on this little thing. The ship Toshika had been given to Benny for her use, and then they go off sailing together. Why were they going off sailing together? We not 100% sure. There's talk about Sosama. There were theories that they were running or they were going to this Sosama. We haven't figured out exactly who he is, or she. I don't know. I got nothing here. But they get dragged down and so on, and then again the science club's looking for the treasure. The Science Academy and the GP guys are saying Washu's looking for the treasure. The Galaxy Police, for the most part, at first don't seem very interested in the treasure. They're interested in the fact that Washu's meddling around in time and mucking things up. That she shouldn't be doing that. They're much more towards their job. The Science Academy, though, the minute they hear that that treasure's down there, they go, "Oh." What's on that ship that's so interesting? Is the Galaxy Police and the Science Academy just trying to get a hold of Dryan tech? If that was so, then the ship by itself would be enough. But I'm thinking they're actually after something else, because Ukon specifically says to her superiors that the fact that Momo's there, the fact that Benny's there, the fact that the key that Momo and Benny have between them is there, isn't interesting. She says what's interesting is is something else, and it doesn't get completely explained what that something else is.
One thing I had also thought about too was if we're looking at this, and me and Pi had talked about this briefly, is if we're looking at this from a timeline perspective, let's say that Benny and Momo just disappeared in time, like just gone. What they had on their ship would be antiquated, and it would be, it could be a Jurian treasure that was very special and was lost forever. I mean, it's kind of in the same vein as today's treasure. Like, there's stuff that's gone from, historical record that people knew existed and we know does exist, but it's just gone. Nobody has any idea where it's at. And so this could be kind of something like that, except on a cosmic level, a level that would get anybody in the universe interested, because this thing, they were transporting it or were taking it somewhere, and on this ship in particular, this thing was there. This thing could be, it's the Indiana Jones thing, riches beyond your wildest dreams and power that would make you immortal or whatever. Something that is completely otherworldly, literally, and everybody wants in on the action because it was only there for that one point in time and then it was gone. And so I think that's kind of what I'm rolling with.
Well, there's also the fact about who Momo and Benny are. Dagon, you and I were discussing this earlier as well, that why haven't Ayaka and Sasami recognized Momo and Benny? Because, again, they're from Jirai. They're the pinnacle of Jirai royalty, except for perhaps whoever's sitting on the throne right now. In which case, if Momo is anywhere way tied to the Jirai royal family, you think Ayaka might have an in as to knowing who they are. And yet, remember, we had seen Benny and Momo's ship Toshika in the feudal era 1,300 years ago. So one asks, might Momo and Benny actually be from that time period? They might actually be from the Jirai of 1,300 years ago. If that's the case, if that is actually the case, then when they were trapped on Earth or scattered to the dimensional winds, whichever way they went, because we never saw Benny get sucked up. It's possible Benny might have been sitting in that escape pod all this time and was awoken with no memory because she was sealed away in cryostasis or something, like Ayaka was in the OVA. But anyway, if they're from history, it's possible that they might have just vanished from Jiraiya's dry records and be lost forever, and now have reappeared. It's also possible, and this is possibly what might happen in the end game, if Tenchi and company help Momo and Benny get back to where they belong in time and space, back to their mission back in history, and they keep going, it's possible that Ayaka might open up a Jiraiyan textbook and see Momo and Benny as adults in that book and go, oh my god, we helped them. We helped Jiraiya's history. This was meant to happen.
Yeah, I had seen it as that way as well with regards to you kind of look at ground zero of the incident, whatever that might be, and if that's tied into, which I think it is, of why their ship crashed, had problems, is especially when we that first glimpse. I can't remember the episode number, but it was like right when we were gone at Chibi-Pon, when we're all going, oh my god, is when we see Jirai, and we're introduced to younger versions of Benny and Momo, which I agree. I think Benny was like a space pirate or something, and since she was young, they raised her Jiraiyan, so anyway. So yeah, I do take it as they are their proper timeline, or they're originally from a Jiraiya from 1300 or whatever, thousands of years ago, which then came to our planet 1300 years ago, and that seems to jive with where's Tenchi at? He's in feudal Japan, and I also think along those lines that Tori, Hachiko, and Hana are also originally from that time period, because we see them in the garb, and very much that it looks like that's where they belong, or that they don't seem to act as though they're out of place there. But one can argue that, though, because that's the fun thing, is there is a lot of unanswered stuff, and it does get confusing, absolutely. So I never hold that solely against anyone, but the fun thing is, and the thing you have to remember is, we're still in the middle of it right now. We don't know a lot of stuff. We don't know everything. We're gonna find out. So as to how they all came to be, and it seems that they were also implying heavily to me that Junai, the place, that is over. I mean, obviously it's over that same site that we see in the feudal timeline, because that's where the ship crashed, and it's very much leading up to, that's what's buried underneath the school, and that's what Mahoshi and the science club and everybody was basically digging for, whatever this treasure is on board. So still confused on the where exactly. I'm with you there, Pi, and it had slipped my mind. Mahoshi was there too, so Mahoshi couldn't have just been. She wasn't just from 1300 years ago and then ended up in Tenchi's time. That wouldn't really jive with any Tenchi incarnation of Mahoshi. Ryoko there's precedence for, but Mahoshi being there, so that was definitely leaning towards. I'm with you there on, they felt like, even though I felt like they were drawing from Ryoko's OVA background a bit, as like, oh, I could just see her as, she just had this, not a care in the world attitude in the woods in feudal Japan. So I absolutely was seeing, oh, she's the demon from the legend, of course, but her original backstory. And then, of course, Mahoshi there, though, with her mech unit, that seemed much more like Universe. So it's just a lot of questions still unanswered. It's exciting.
With air quotes original Hachiko, Hana, and Tori. Again, we don't know what happened to them in the feudal era. If they got sucked up into the rift and got scattered along, just like Momo did. We don't see Benny get sucked up in there and get scattered to the dimensional winds either. We don't know what's going on there. It's possible that Hachiko, Hana, and Tori that we see in the Junai school might be the descendants of those three. I mean, it has been 1300 years. So unless they were sucked up into the rift and scattered around. So again, lots of unanswered questions. we may never get these things answered. For example, which Ryoko and Mahoshi are we seeing in the feudal era? Are they from Universe? Are they from a copy of Universe? Are they from some other incarnation? Are they actually the ones that belong in this timeline? Who knows? We might not get answers to those questions, and to some degree, I can live with that. Getting answers to absolutely everything, it takes the mystery out of it. It takes the fun out of it. I like being able to speculate about things and saying, you know what, this is my theory, and you know what, your theory sounds pretty good too. And let's weigh the merits of each. That's what good conversation's all about.
They say there's always a lighthouse, there's always a man, and there's always a city. One thing that Tenchi's various offshoots have in common is that they have a lot of similarities. They have a lot of things that are the same, but they also have things that are just drastically different. And there's precedent that we can pull from the other universes, but it's very possible that this is just completely its own thing. And maybe some of the rules that we know of from the other continuities just simply wouldn't work here. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of subtle differences, changes between them, but there's also some major ones. One of the biggest ones you can pull from, obviously, is, say, the relationship between Washu and Ryoko being mother and daughter in the OVA, and then them being unconnected as far as their past goes in Universe and Tokyo. This is other instances of that sort of thing. Also, the ages of the characters. I believe in Universe they were all implied to be between the ages of 17 to like 23, whereas in the OVA it's like, okay, Washu's 20,000 years old and Ryoko's 7,000 years old and Ayeka is however many thousands of years old. There's all sorts of strange numbers getting thrown around. Little small differences that do make a difference, but on the surface everybody is the same person, and I think I is just kind of going with that. We can pull our best guesses, but maybe the characters that we saw get sucked up weren't even have anything to do with Universe at all. They could be very similar in description from the way they look as their Universe counterparts, but that may have had nothing to do with Universe at all. It could just have been another of the infinite multiverses where they just so happen to look like that, but we're actually different people in different places. So there's precedent to pull from, but it may not necessarily be a foundation that we could truly build off of, and we just have to accept I's continuity as being completely of its own. And it's kind of wink wink nudge nudging to the other continuities, but maybe it isn't brushing up against them in specific in respect to those continuities, as it were.
And that's perfectly fine. Again, don't need to be tied down to one particular continuity. Let's just have fun. Whatever happened to having fun?
We banned that actually before we left for the convention. I don't know if you noticed.
Sorry, I didn't get the memo. However, I do have to ask you, Nil, as a GP, as a fan of a particular GP character, what do you think about the GP SWAT unit?
It's interesting. I've always been kind of curious about the Galaxy Police as a whole, because we've seen some bits about them here and there through the different offshoots, Universe, the OVA, GXP, stuff like that, but it's very difficult to get a clear view exactly on how they operate. They're very much a background character. They were a goon squad for most intents and purposes that just so happened to have, multiple characters be Galaxy police officers, but the GP themselves always had kind of an air of mystery and in some cases ineptitude about them that you would expect from a police unit. And seeing like a GP squat force, like we're going like full Rainbow Six here with the Galaxy Police all of a sudden. Like I'm fully expecting some flashbangs, some Counter-Strike type stuff. If I see a P90, I'm probably going to rage quit the series. Deegs all over the place. It's going to be interesting to see the setup with an armed force of Galaxy police officers, because they usually fight in ships. We very rarely see them as foot soldiers, and it seems like they're going to be bringing the pain to Earth very soon. So that's going to be fun to watch.
Well, we have had a little bit of precedent for a special operations unit for the Galaxy Police, because Negishi, being the man that he is, again, he directed Tenchi Muyo in Love, and Tenchi Muyo in Love 2. In Tenchi Muyo in Love, we have our boy, the operative, who is, again, we don't get his name. He's just called the Operative, or Operative A, I think is how he's listed in the credits. But he's a Galaxy Police officer, and he quotes himself dealing with as being part of the Galaxy Police that deals with serious criminals, i.e., Kane. And what we have here in episode 44, they mention a special division will be leading these activities. They rip off their overcoats and reveal GP SWAT, which kind of makes me go, are we going to be dealing with some of the same special weapons and tactics, i.e., SWAT, that we saw in Tenchi Muyo and Love, like active cloak, cyborg machine gun arms, any kind of that wacky stuff? If that's so, we're going to see some pain getting brought a lot here very soon.
Crazy hope within a hope, tiny string holding on. But what if a certain former housemate that got promoted, and then that special unit? You know what all I'm saying. I'm still holding out, man.
Oh, the back of my head, I'm thinking if Mahoshi's kind of worming her way into the intrigue side of things, I would not be surprised if Kione rose up through the ranks, got on the GP SWAT, and right when things are getting dire, she steps out and takes off her glasses or her helmet or what have you, and says, "Nope, not on my watch. This is my house," and proceeds to help the family.
Or kind of like Tokyo, where we see her kind of when she goes unchecked, and she ends up pursuing that arguably too much. She gets too fervent about pursuing her career and going up the ranks and getting promoted and yada yada. And kind of in Tokyo, she almost sacrifices her adoptive family along the way. What if she's put in a very difficult position here, where SWAT is deployed the last place she would expect, although if Washu's living there, she shouldn't be that surprised. It would come up eventually. And she's deployed on Earth, and that's the situation. Man, that would be so great. I'm not that all hopeful that actually happening, but I'm holding out a little bit of hope.
You like to imagine everybody by now would kind of realize something's wrong on the Earth. It's fucking Washu's fault. Oh God, here we go.
Actually, it's kind of surprising that they haven't sent the SWAT or someone to arrest Washu for some of the random shit she's done in different continuities. Of course, then again, maybe it wasn't blatantly obvious that was her. I mean, notice that Mahoshi's entire subplot, and apparently also Ukon's entire subplot, is trying to figure out who caused the time and space distortion. And it wasn't until Mahoshi heard Washu's voice, reported it to Ukon, who in turn no doubt reported it to her superiors, that the GP and the SA, the Science Academy, actually turned over and said, "You know what? It's about time we fucking do something. Here we go."
Well, I mean, that's another thing too that we have to, keep in mind, is that we know that Washu did it, but what did Washu do?
Well, considering that Washu's also saying that something went awry, that something isn't quite right, that there was other forces involved, I'm wondering if Washu actually caused all this, or maybe she opened Pandora's box.
In short, she spat in God's eye, and he blinked.
Or he just opened his mouth and swallowed. Thank you, Kintaro.
My queen, forgive me!
All right, gentlemen, ties back up. Let's get back to business.
Okay, so, gentlemen, translator boys, Crazed and Nil, I have a question for you. In episode 38, when they're talking with when Washu's Monolith is talking with Rui and Yuki with Monolith, I like it, Washu said that she lent the one we exiled. I don't think she's talking about Goriki. Is she talking about Mahoshi?
I mean, it's really hard to say for sure, considering that, it's possible that Washu is aware that Mahoshi is there and is just playing it up in the event that Mahoshi acknowledges the others, so that there's no question, like, yeah, obviously, I know who they are. Mahoshi's unaware for a while, it seems, who's behind all this, and then finally comes to discover, oh, it's actually Washu that's behind all this. I heard her voice from the Monolith. It's definitely her. Maybe Washu was pretty well aware that they were going to catch on eventually, and that Mahoshi was probably going to get involved, because she is fairly all-seeing. Would just be like, oh, well, I'll address this as such and just refer to her as the exiled one in the event that the Science Club just asks me any questions. Be like, yeah, we threw her out. Like, don't pay her any mind. Considering that she's the only person that we've seen that would be part of the Washu's included group. I don't think it could possibly be anybody else.
What if, because I'm just rewatching this now that Pi brought it up, is in that room, in that scene, Gorky-kun, Rui-chan, and Yuki are all there interacting with the crab monolith, what that is, Washu. But also in the room is Benny, overhearing everything, but just kind of being like, whatever, I'm too cool to actually take part in the conversation. After mentioning the exiled one, Washu says, you'd better get the exiled one to go along with it, or to do it, if you don't want to go to hell, my divine punishment upon you. And then the very next scene is Benny going over to Tenchi's house to convince Tenchi and company to help them in their endeavors. Because at this point, when the conversation's going on, Mahoshi's still at the dig site. She never stopped digging, we find out. So what again, you guys, you were the ones on the ground level are translating and stuff, and I mean, where Washu says you'd better get the exiled one to do it, or else at this point, and then Benny goes right over to Tenchi. I don't know. It's clearly meant to be not obvious at this point, so I don't know. Could be Mahoshi, could be Tenchi, even. I don't know.
Well, she mentions that during one of the first conversations, in fact, the first conversation, we see the crab monolith pop up. She specifically says that we gave you the exiled one. At that point, they didn't have Tenchi on board. They needed to get him. So he can't possibly be it because she didn't give them Tenchi at all. They still had to get him on board with the Science Club's doings. It also can't be Goriki-kun because he's invented by Yuki. We get that inside look inside of her and Rui's little apartment building. We see all the designs, and she says, I don't know where they come from exactly, but she just kind of comes up with these designs. Is it possible that Washu's kind of like implanting these designs into her head, and then she just happens to design them? Or is it just because she is a creative scientific genius and she's designed them? But it seems very likely that perhaps, other than some of the technology that she's not aware of exactly how it works, Yuki is potentially the originator for Goriki-kun. I don't think he's the exiled one. Mahoshi is really the only one that makes any amount of sense because she's the only one who is remaining working underground, and they make a lot of references to the exiled one and doing work and stuff like that. She's the only one down there still digging. Everybody else is gone. Like the rest of the science club's like, yeah, but nobody else. We don't have that many people left. That's right. They don't have anybody left. They have Mahoshi left. She's the only one left at the dig site. She's the only one who's still going along with this shit. It's very possible there is another unseen person, but the cards seem pretty obvious that what they're referring to there is Mahoshi. For all intents and purposes, Washu is aware she's there, so she's come up with a backstory to bullshit in the event that Mahoshi does her ditzy thing and slips up and says, "Oh, I know who that is." Like, yeah, of course you do. We exiled you. Go away. Shush.
Fair enough. That was my question. Carry on to the next segment of the podcast.
I'll take potent potables for 800, Alex. Actually, I got to bring that up. I had some fun ideas for the character-oriented drink thread. I don't know if you guys have seen, but I had some fun thinking those up last night.
I gotta check that
I'll
out.
check them out later.
But on favorite things that have happened out of all the shit that's happened, my God, I got to think about this one for a minute here. Is obviously the storming of the castle with the new girls clashing with the old girls, with Ryoko being a badass and going head to head, toe to toe, and Blade to Wooden Bokan to Ryoko with Hachiko. Like that was pretty great. And of course, Ayaka's defending herself against Hana. Hana's messing up, calling her grandma, and then all the little modules appearing out of nowhere to give her what for. That was another classic moment that I just love. A lot of the as short as the combat sequences have been, a lot of them have been really stellarly shot and very enjoyable to watch. And it's kind of a shame that they do kind of come and go within like seconds, because there's very obviously a lot of love that goes into those and a lot of budget too. I also enjoyed pretty greatly most recently, the sequence where all the girls are sitting there and arguing about how effective the posters are going to be. And we see there's a couple different pieces with that episode that I really loved. The sequence where Hachiko has her little tablet out, and they're like, "Oh, well, I don't know if this. Do you think this poster is going to work? I don't know if it's got enough zest." And then Hachiko pulls out this shot of Momo kind of doing like a sexy pose, and Hana's just like, let's just get rid of that, and deletes it so there can be like none of that mess in this. We're doing this the clean way. And Hachiko's like almost in tears that she's lost her precious Momo picture, and then being the cutthroat woman that she is, Yuki shows up with Rui, shows the poster. It's like has her photoshopped to have just giant breasts and just does not look a thing like her normal self. And it even has text on the thing, which is basically sexual innuendo. Like it says, loves graduated cylinders or enjoys working with graduated cylinders. It's in a comedic tone to be sexually suggestive. She's very obviously playing the field where the other girls just don't want to do that. And even Rui's like, honey, I don't know if that's gonna work. But I just loved that entire episode sequence of events in terms of comedy. Probably some other ones from the older episodes, but I think I'll pass this torch off somebody else.
Well, I very much liked it will be our episode 36, the dormitory cookout. I love every minute of that episode. I feel largely that way about every episode, on pretty much. But this one, just from the very start, fade in. Tenchi's up there fixing a roof, so a little nod there to pick your continuity. Tenchi's had to clean up after the destructive superpowered women and fixing the roof more than one occasion. This is just yet another chapter in Tenchi's long book of fixing roofs. So, but no, I love that one because it's a great takeaway message for anybody in any context. And of course, it fits in the series as well. It's kind of we've had our teams since the beginning. You've kind of had the science club versus the student council, and here we've got even the old cast in. So we kind of have like old cast versus new cast. All of the divisive things, potentially divisive things in this series, all in the same place. And it's kind of like there's kind of this moment right when they come out and everybody sees each other, and it's like, oh man, is something going to happen? But leave it to Momo to propose that they all, you know what, it's a nice day, and we got enough for everybody here. We're having a barbecue. Why don't you join us? Why don't we all have a barbecue together? It'll be nice. And so they do, and it's fun, and so it's a lighthearted episode in that respect. But I think the message is strong there. Again, anyone can apply it to any situation of their own. But I think especially pertinent for us in the fandom, the implications of that is hey, why don't we all enjoy the barbecue together? Why don't we just enjoy or whatever series, Why don't we put aside the little squabbling for now and just enjoy it together? We all have that in common. So that was that was a favorite of mine. In addition to, I've already mentioned some like Call Me Princess Part 2 with Hana, but I'll pass the mic.
I can definitely cue off my favorite moments of the past couple weeks. Seeing Planet Jirai. I was with everyone when we were at Chibi Paw, and I put that in front of Who, I think, and I put it in front of Chuck, and everyone, all of us, like squeed and went, "It's Jirai! It's the same planet that we saw in Universe! Yes!" And then also recently we saw the Galaxy Police headquarters again. I was like, "Oh my God, it's the GP headquarters!" We're starting to see the stuff that just makes us go, "Yes, big things are happening!" is all of a sudden cropping up again. But I'd say amongst all the cool shit that we've seen in the last 2-3 weeks now, that we've 4 weeks that we haven't reported on things, episode 41 and 44 caught my attention the most. And it's a much like what Nil said a moment ago, was Ryoko and Ayaka showing their stuff. Ryoko literally pulled the exact same pose she had when she blew away a good chunk of Tenchi's school in OVA 1 episode 1. She crossed her arm across her chest and just blew away about most of Hachiko's swords when the two of them were battling. Then there's Ayaka, and Ayaka's using her mini guardians to shoot lasers. I don't think she's ever done that before. She's always been very defensive, very shield-like, and you see a different air to Ayaka's character. She's a whole lot more aggressive this go around than she has been in many of the other series, which I think that's a good change of pace. Ayaka's stepped up from the seemingly meek princess we've seen before, and she's actually putting her foot down a lot more often than she used to. Then, of course, the sword key and waking up the ship and all the realizations with Momo and Benny that happened in those 2 episodes. My God, I was in hog heaven right there with all that stuff, just conglomerated, pure, concentrated Tenchi content.
I guess my favorite part was probably like most other people's when Hana and Hachiko went up against Ryoko and Aika, because at the end, after they got done fighting, I mean, granted, the one with Ryoko and Hachiko is a little bit more slapstick because, oh, look, Hachiko lost her sword again, so she's going to break down and cry. But that was probably my favorite part, because, at least to me, it just proved that Negishi and everybody else behind the show weren't going to let these new characters overshadow the old. You know, it wasn't gonna turn into an OVA 3 no Ike moment where she shows up and everybody better bow down to her because reasons. You know, Ryoko's got to help Hachiko get back because she's still crying the whole way down the hallway, and she's holding her hand, and Hana's laying on the ground with Ayaka has her foot on her head. I mean, granted, Hana kind of liked that, but yeah, that was probably my favorite part because that's what it proved to me.
Actually, that's one thing that probably we should all make clear is, folks, a lot of people have been worried that the old girls, Ryoko, Ayako, Sasami, Washu, are getting overshadowed by the new girls, and I think those 2 episodes in particular, if you guys haven't realized, Ayaka and Ryoko dominated the other girls. I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you, but nobody's done. The only people that are dominating are the ones that should be dominating.
I feel confident saying it already, even though the series isn't finished. But even though certain things I have advocated, hey, you gotta wait till it's finished to say. But anyway, how of all things, happens in any series, but Tenchi especially. We know it from every incarnation. New girl or new character, attack because you're new and you're not the established cast. I hear you. I'm guilty of that as well. But amazingly, Ai has shown us not only can it be done, you could make new characters endearing to you as well, and have them right alongside the good old cast, and still have the good old cast be who they are. So, TLDR: how to introduce new characters into Tenchi series, Tenchi Muyo. How not to introduce new characters in a Tenchi series, COVA 3.
One of the things that cropped up right before we went to Chibi-Paw that we didn't get to talk about was the Hot Springs episode, which caused a bit of a clamor among people, as well as the bathhouse episode when, after the battle was over, with Ryoko and Ayaka in the bath, and there was much divisive talk about that on many social media sites. A lot of people didn't appreciate the innuendo that you had in episode 31 with the gloomy hot springs, with Tenchi getting stuck in there and unfortunately unable to get out, as well as later when you have Ryoko and Ayaka scooting around. Again, Ayaka comes out in her modesty towel that she's always had, and Ryoko gives precisely 0 fucks when she walks out, butt naked, and Tenchi, of course, says, Ryoko, put on some clothes, and she says, what? It's cool here. I live here, don't I? Same thing, notably, Benny does the same thing back in the hot spring in the bathhouse episode as well, because she's walking through the dorm with a towel around her waist and around her shoulders, and that's it. And she gives 0 fucks, the same way Ryoko gives 0 fucks the whole time.
Well, it's a pretty interesting divisive measure on how people feel about fan service. So we can actually lead this into another piece of iTenchi talkback that we almost, I didn't think we were going to be able to fit it in here, but Angel Zapata, I apologize if I said that incorrectly, sir, said kind of pointless and very tame fan service since we've seen Ryoko and Ayeka naked in the OVAs. And this was, of course, pertaining to one of the more recent episodes where Tenchi is home and the science club girls are there or not the science club, the student council is there. Excuse me. Student council club girls are there to stop him from being taken away by the science club again, and the girls just don't care. They walk out in their towels, and he obviously feels that that was tame and lame fan service, and I mean. I don't really know what to say to something like that because this is a show that has had varying degrees of fan service. The fact that the OVA had direct nudity in it is a result of it being a more adult publication. This is being aired on Tokyo MX on TV. Do they allow? I don't know if they allow nudity like that much on that channel or whatever, but I think it's a matter of not necessarily that they wanted to be prudish with it, but that's just the way it was. Like, do they necessarily need to have their tits hanging out the entire time when they're having that discussion? I don't necessarily think so. Negishi is not one to shy away from it. You also forget that we had fan service in the form of Haruna in Tenchi Muyo and Love 2, Tenchi Muyo Forever. She was buck naked, and we got to see them straight up fucking, which is something that hasn't really been shown in an animation form for this series at all. That right there is above and beyond the call of what any of the other shows have done. So I mean, I don't really know what the problem is here. Even with I had the whole bathhouse episode where the Hana was grabbing onto Momo, as it were, and demonstrating to her what she claims is the way that she has her breast grow. It was a cringeworthy moment for many. Some people don't really want the fan service part of things, and it was just kind of there. But I don't know how. I don't see what the issue is here because they had towels on. Like I don't know. Like the universe didn't have direct nudity until the movies. Tokyo didn't have any nudity at all that I can think of. Those were TV shows and not OVA productions. Only the OVA has had direct nudity, and even still, when you think back on it, Washu had something covering herself up in the bathhouse. One of the instances in the episode where she's taking care of the child because everybody else is totally inept at childbearing, and when we learn Washu's past in OVA 2, she's actually wearing a bathing suit. She could have appeared completely buck-ass naked there, but she didn't. She's wearing a suit. Was that a problem? I mean, I wanted to address that because I think it's a very interesting thing for somebody to bring up, but I don't really understand the complaint myself there.
The fan service and nudity scenes in iTenchi again are very similar to Universe in Tokyo because again Universe had an onsen episode, a couple scenes here and there with Mahoshi and Kione in the public bath. You also have Washu's onsen that's in the alternate universe that Tenchi and company can't get into because they're male. Then Tenchi in Tokyo has a couple serious scenes. One where Ryoko's butt naked, looking at herself in the mirror, thinking, "Is this the life I want?" That's near the end of the series, actually. And the nudity, of course, in Tenchi Muyo and Love 2 is much more adult-oriented because of the content with that one. That one's a very much more a slow burn drama and much more personal. The nudity there is not meant to be pornographic in that particular sense. It's supposed to be more or less situational. Again, different strokes on this one, guys.
You said stroke.
I did. It's true.
Well, let's dissect this, shall we? First off, like it's been mentioned, this is being shown on TV in Japan on Tokyo MX. And every single show, almost every single show that is shown on TV is censored. If they made it into production with breasts or other, it is censored always. That's why you'll have the TV version have like smoke around it or whatever, and then the Blu-ray DVD release will be uncensored. That's how it's always been. They can't get away with nudity. of course it's going to be tame in comparison to the OVA, because the OVA was made direct to home video. It was made to the home video market in Japan. So you could get away with nudity. You could show nudity. They wanted to see nudity. That's what OVA was. Pointless, like it's been mentioned in, multiple times, Tenchi has always had some type of fan service like that. There's been an onsen episode in every single series across every continuity. So saying it's pointless is like saying a staple of the series is pointless. How they direct it, how it's played up, how it's shown, it's always been a little bit slightly different, but it's a staple of the series, ultimately. And of all of the fan service shots in Tenchi Muyo, only 3 have ever been done like contemporary anime. Very focused from an undershot, very voyeuristic. When Ryoko walks out, it's not, you don't have that kind of like 70s pan in, pan out shot where it's like, whoa, look, it's boobs. No, it's just Ryoko being Ryoko being naked. The same thing with Benny. It's just Benny being naked. It's not meant to be fetishistic. It's just her doing that. That is a big step up for a Tenchi Muyo series in the last couple of years. Obviously, they do have somewhat fan service shots, but in the shots that you would expect it the most, like the nudity shots, it's not like that.
I think a good chunk of it also stems from people's expectations, what they really want. At the end of the day, Tenchi is a pretty unique thing in that it has something for a little bit of everybody. And there are some people who obviously want a little bit more direct, nude fan service, more outwardly lewd things in their series. And, I'm not really sure where the expectation for that came, but there has been fan service in the show before. There's been, outright sex in the show and related materials. There's been, I guess I should say in the series because the sex was in the movies, but it's not like this series is prudish. They're not trying to skirt the fan service because they don't want to go on it. We've seen them do some pretty ridiculous fan service already in this series. It's just a different kind of fan service than the one that I guess you are coming to expect, and I know there's nothing wrong with that. The people who do see it enjoy it. If we can think back, a very stereotypical fan service piece, the panty shot. The very first week, a lot of us felt that the weakest link at that time was the panty shot when Momo fell from the sky and landed on Tenchi. And it's been a recurring theme. It's happened at least 3 times now in the show. And at the time, that was our major complaint with it was, the panty shot was terrible. None of us are prudes. We all expect and realize that sex is going to happen with this show, but it's about the style of fan service, I think, that you've come to expect. And Tenchi has done things a little bit differently in some respects, but in a lot of ways, it's pretty much the exact same as the show has been for the past 20 years. The only difference is that they had a towel on. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Tenchi Talkback. This is our community outreach to you. Again, if you want to take part in this segment of the podcast, which turned out to be the entirety of our podcast this time, we apologize, but we hope you enjoy all the Chibi Paw stuff that has already come out and is to come. Simply comment on the week's events with Tenchi Talkback as the hashtag, which you will see in the video description below, to take part in the discussion. We will handpick out a handful of comments, and we will talk about them at the end of, and in this case, the entirety of the next episode of the Tenchicast. So, with that, we shall turn the mic back over to Dagon, who will take us to the closing ceremonies.
If you like what you heard today, like us on Facebook, follow us on Tumblr, Twitter, Pinterest, any social media outlet you can think of, and subscribe to us on YouTube if you can't wait for iTunes. And if you like to discuss all things Tenchi Muyo, including the newest series, Tenchi Muyo, as it is coming out, head on over to Tenchiforum.com, where, much like the carnival, the discussion never ends. Until next time, stay gold.